our moderator for panel number 2. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kimberly Statham, the Deputy Superintendent for MCPS.
I have to tell you how excited I am about this event tonight because in my own experiences, being a woman and being a black woman, our topic for the second panel is around career possibilities and overcoming barriers. So I'm interested in hearing from our panelists about what their experiences have been. So I understand that Dr. Addison is doing double duty, so she's serving on both panels. Congratulations. And so feel free to jump in. But I want to welcome Kelly James, who is the founder and CEO of Americaris. And she will be speaking with us, as well as Chimaka Okoroha, which is a beautiful name. So she is with Microsoft. And so this needs to be a real candid conversation because what we want to do is make sure that we understand your journey and what you have experienced coming through and how you were able to really rise to the level that you have and making the contributions that you've made so far. But first, I just sort of want to open it up. How many of you remember the movie Hidden Figures from several years ago? Yes. And of course, for those who don't remember that movie, there was a focus on African American female scientists. And back then, there was really not an awareness of the amount of brilliance that was among women, and specifically in this case, African American women. So I think we still, even back in the 60s, prior to that, we're still facing some of those challenges. How many of you have seen Black Panther? Okay, so I'm not going to give away the plot for those of you who haven't seen it, but there's a character named Shuri, and she is a young woman of color, and she's a brilliant engineer and technology genius. So we're here to talk a bit about why is that so unusual? Why are we so struck by these characters in movies? It's because we don't see enough of it, and we need to celebrate it, but we need to increase the number of women who are making these contributions. So one of the things we really want to touch on is the fact that we only have our students for a short period of time. It may not feel like that to them as they go through 13 years of schooling with us, but in the whole grand scheme of things, we really we have to make every day count for them. And so we've learned a lot from the first panel, and we look forward to hearing the experiences from our experts on the second panel. So I'd like to start with you, and Keisha, please jump in about your experiences as well to these questions. And these questions go for all of you. And so let's start with Chimaka about sharing your background, but really infusing what were the catalysts for your interest in a STEM field?
Yeah, sure thing. As mentioned, my name is Chimaka Okoroha. I work at Microsoft. And growing up, I had no idea computer science was a thing. It was more so I used to play with computers at home, and I was just like really good at it. So I was the only one that people would come to, ask for help and things like that. So I assumed I was going to be a lawyer. Looked into it. It wasn't for me, so I was like, okay, I'll do political science because I wanted to be in the government. So I signed up for college, got accepted as poli-sci. A week before, I believe, I had a conversation with my aunt. And she was like, are you sure you want to do political science? Why not try computer science? I was like, what's that? She was like, just try it. I was like, okay, sure, whatever. So college was for trying stuff. I'm just like, sure. So I signed up, got accepted into the program, and I started. And I fell in love with it immediately. I started tutoring my freshman year, but I had some obstacles, of course. I had a professor at the university that kind of told me that, oh, you could do something else, this field is for men. And I did notice, I was the only girl in most of my classes, but it wasn't a big deal because I grew up with guys, so it wasn't a big deal for me. So he was like, yeah, it's a men field, And I was like, no, I think I could do it. So I stuck with it. And my sophomore year, I met this amazing woman who was my mentor. And that's like what kept me in computer science. Because without her, I would have probably left. And after that, I went headstrong and I got my job. And here I am.
I'd like to interject there before we go to Kelly. It reminded me of an experience that I had when I was at the University of Maryland, and it was quite a few years before you were in college. But I remember registering for a class, a physics class, and the professor looked at me, and he was a male professor, white male professor, and he just looked at me. He didn't know me. And he said, why don't you try something that you'll be successful at? And I remember that feeling that I got, that initial sort of sinking feeling, but then something, hit me, and I said, wait a minute, I'm going to prove to him that I can do this. And so as we, face these obstacles, there has to be something inside of us that confidence kicks in. And a lot of times we don't have advocates, who are going to encourage us. So that's why, folks in the school system, teachers, principals, counselors, it's important for them to really ingrain in our students that confidence so that when they face these types of situations, that kicks in and they're able to persevere. So thank you for sharing that. Kelly?
So hello everyone, can you hear me? So I took a different career track in tech. I started a technology company called Mercaris, and we're about 5 years old now. We're a market data and analytics service, and then a commodities trading platform. So what that means in English is basically you can buy and sell organic corn and wheat and soybeans and cocoa and sugar and coffee like you would on one of the big exchanges in Chicago. If you saw the old movie, Eddie Murphy movie, Trading Places, they were trading commodities in person, like face to face. Well, that has changed in the last 15 years, and now all of that trading is done online. So, think eBay, but for all the things that you, eat every day. I myself didn't really think of myself as an entrepreneur growing up. I knew I was gonna, because my parents told me I didn't really have a choice. I knew I was gonna go to college. I thought I'd maybe go into law or medicine or, and I hadn't thought of entrepreneurship as a path. So I found it a little bit accidentally. After I went to college, I ended up working at a startup just because I thought it sounded like a really cool mission. And that exposed me to all this ecosystem of people that were founding companies, and they were all based on technology. Even if you yourself aren't a coder, I'm not a coder, I'm an economist. This is what I studied in school. These are all built on a technology platform. And so to echo the last panel, anything you're interested in, anything that you decide to go into, there's a technology application that makes it all possible. It's almost impossible to name a profession that doesn't have some science or technology, support to it. So that's kind of, how I got my start. And I will say, I like the focus on what we can do to build the pipeline and getting girls interested in coding and getting them interested in math and science. I'm also willing to talk about the things that are hard once you get there, because it's not all us. It's not all the pipeline problem. Once you get there, you do have some prejudices, some misperceptions that you have to overcome, and you can do it. It helps to go into it with your eyes open and knowing that it's something that you can encounter.
I just want to add one thing in terms of that you can do it, and it's also part of that what's in you. And so I have 2 girls, and one of the things that I frequently say to them is you're a math genius, because changing that internal perception about, well, math is for boys and girls do this, and so anytime they're doing homework or we're talking about work, I always say, you're a math genius, and I inspire in them to remember for themselves that it doesn't matter that it's math. You're great at it. You're perfect at it. And so just reminding girls that they can do it, and that instilling in them that own self-esteem and that self-confidence in doing that work is very important.
And I'm glad you raised that. It's the whole psychosocial aspect of this work. We can train on the content, but all of the other attributes are the very things, the way we think about ourselves as learners and achievers is critically important. So thank you for sharing that. So I believe it was Allison in the last panel mentioned that we have an existence of an aging curriculum, and sometimes we don't keep up. So we know we have to catch up and then keep up. So with that in mind, what do careers in the STEM field look like now? And what do you envision for the future? And what advice do you have for us in terms of making sure that we provide the resources and support that our students need in order to prepare for jobs that don't even exist yet? So Chamaka, you want to start?
Sure. So yeah, as mentioned, technology is ever changing. So I would suggest that you start mobile. So everything is moving towards mobile. So the best thing for me to advise you is to look up coding classes. If you're into coding, scripting is also an option. You can do things like check your email with a script, and you don't have to actually physically be there anymore. Also, what's like really cool that's happening is AI, artificial intelligence. So all these great things are happening and changing, and it's great to be ahead of the game before you're behind the game, of course. But yeah, just keeping up with the trends and staying focused is my best bet.
Great, thank you.
So I'll add a sort of a non-technology component to this, which is I just think exposure to as many experiences as you can have. And maybe this is something that doesn't require a total change in curriculum. So for example, why am I in an agriculture startup when there are very few black women? Because I had the opportunity to work with coffee farmers. I was actually working with farmers of color in different countries. I have no ag background. I did not grow up on a farm. My parents are from the Bronx. So there was no reason for me to go into this field, except I was part of a program that did this, and I discovered a real passion for it. So at this age, taking advantage of the opportunities that are out there, and then the adults that are in your lives, asking you questions. What did you enjoy about it? What's wrong with it? If you could fix something in this experience or field that you had, what would you do? And I feel like that helps foster the idea of looking at the world as you would like it to be rather than as it is. And that a lot of times sparks the motivation to learn AI. Artificial intelligence on its own, but artificial intelligence applied to something that you've seen in your life that you think needs changing. And then that, can lead to the next step and the next step. So that would be, my advice is just a hunger for new experiences and really, geeking out on whatever it is that, you're passionate about.
Great.
No, I'll just add on to what Kelly just said. I think it's important to encourage innovation, right? And encourage imagination in young girls. I think when we think about some of the activities that they're doing in their classes today, I think in elementary schools, they always are growing something. And then, that's part of our curriculum, that they have all of these different things that are about nature, and then thinking about, well, how can we bring a technological aspect to that work that we're already doing, and infusing technology more into the current curriculum. I think it's a good thing to do.
Excellent. So as I was reading all of your bios, these are fantastic women, and I think the common thread of what I'm hearing is, be open to learning and exploring. I was really touched by something in Chamaka's bio when she talked about even in her hobbies, she tries new things. She, tried sewing. She sewed bow ties and cooking, and she said that these are all things I would have never guessed that I was good at, but until I tried them, I knew that I could do it. So I think it's that spirit that we bring to the work and to our interests, making sure that we pay attention to our interests. And it makes me think about how many of us talk about when we had to claim a major in college, and how many times we changed it, because oftentimes we're just not exposed enough to what's out there, and so we should take advantage of that. So why do you really think, and we've touched on this a little bit, but one of the panelists from the other team talked about, we want to make sure that we give young women of color opportunities, and young women in general opportunities in the STEM field, but there's so much underrepresentation. And the issue is not so much giving people an opportunity, but there's so many wonderful ideas that are left on the table and not explored. So talk a bit more about your journey and some of why you think we're so underrepresented in the STEM field. Keisha, you want to start?
Sure.
Mix it up a little.
I know, right? So I think, so what I do a lot of data analysis for the district, which involves a lot of math. And my interest in math also started early. So I was the kid in high school who, I had a cohort of friends. And so my peer group was that group of friends who we're like, okay, in order to get to calculus by 12th grade, we got to take these two maths at the same time. And so we plotted our path to calculus in freshman year, right? So, and I was that kid who took algebra in 7th grade. And so really having that love and interest in math early was beneficial for me. But I think when you come out of that, just having the knowledge and understanding of what you can do with it beyond that is important. For me, I went into educational psychology. And so I don't think there's a lot of information out there for some girls to know this is what you can do if you are in this pathway. It's kind of like, if you're in math, people think, oh, I have to be a math teacher. Mm-hmm. They don't think beyond kind of the fields that you ladies are in. They don't think beyond and say, oh, I can go into tech, I can go into IT, I can do all these different things. It really is a narrow mindset, and I think we need to kind of broaden that more and show them and give them more information, like, well, with this background, you can do so many things. And really broadening the mindset about what you can do when you focus on different areas.
Excellent. It reminds me of, and I will admit, I'm a pretty traditional thinker. I was as a mother. And so I was so thrilled that my son, who is now 27 years old, was a math physics major. So I just knew he was going to come back here and teach math and physics and all kinds of good things. But then when he told me, he's in Atlanta and he attended Morehouse College, and he told me he got a job at Turner Broadcasting station. And I said, how do you go from math and physics into the communications field? He said, Mom, I'm coding, I'm doing all kinds of things that I learned and I'm drawing from in this work. So I think that's something that we need to continue emphasizing.
I appreciated the poem that started off this panel, because the analogy, the maze or the introduction to the poem, or gauntlet, or because it's like water dripping will wear away stone, and what happens is at each stage of the process, more of us get worn away. So if you're not introduced to it and you don't get started down the path, if things happen in life, or you're discouraged, or you get to that first job in STEM and you face discrimination, it's hard. It's you've got to be able to the people that can finally navigate all of those different obstacles and come out on the end. It can be really tough. it's a complex problem, so there's a lot of different things that contribute to it. I would say one thing that we haven't talked about yet is that there's this idea. I know that for me, I got good grades in school without working too hard, and I had this fear of failure. Like, what if I do something that that just doesn't work out? Like, what happens? And then there's the sort of psychological fear, and then there's the real fear, like, if I start this company, it doesn't work, how am I going to eat? So there's, there's a lot of times, I think women in particular, we support other people a lot, and a lot of times to break new ground, you need the support of others. So I think, looking for and sometimes demanding, if you have to, the support from your communities, your partners, your families, your friends. I think that's something that can be hard to ask for, but it's so important if you're going to do something that's a little different and a little new and is going to require that type of mental reserve and strength. And then the last thing I'll say is the antidote to failure is just to fail. Do you know there's a conference now that is called FailCon? Fail Conference. I don't know who thought of this, but people go because they talk about the things that did not work out in their companies and their jobs, and it sounds odd when you describe it, but for people who have gone, it can be very enlightening because you can learn from other people's failures. It makes it not as scary, and you see people failed and live to tell the tale later. So I think that's an important concept to get used to when it comes to whenever you're trying to do something new.
So Kelly, I just want to, as a follow-up question, as an entrepreneur, and we're encouraging our students to think independently like that. So when you go for funding and you're making your pitch, what advice would you give to students who have an innovative idea and need to be able to articulate it to those who may be interested, but how do you make sure that they are interested in the work that you're doing? That is really, so I would say, first of all, you can be an entrepreneur in any, within your organization, or you can start something new. And part of one path to entrepreneurship is to raise investment capital from an outside funder. So the Kapor Center, actually, Kapor Capital is known as a funder, a firm that will write checks so that women of color in particular can start and grow companies. So again, if anyone's interested in that path, it's a whole world. It has its own language. So some of it was getting comfortable with the language and why, how the motivations of investors. And like anything else, nobody is born knowing this. You learn it. So there's, online resources. There are groups in every city that help you understand this. I went to an entrepreneur boot camp. It was a 90-day program so that I learned some of the ways to pitch and practice. And like anything else, you do it over and over again, and you get better at it. And there was no magic to it. I just, I did it 5 times and 10 times and 50 times, and then you kind of perfect it. Great. Yeah. Thank you. Chamaka?
Oh, yes. For me, I believe women are underrepresented in STEM because they don't, as many as the other panelists said, there's no face, right? So I'm a coder. I'm not like behind a desk coding every day, but I also like makeup. There is still another profile of Chamaka rather than just someone sitting behind a desk and coding. So breaking that mold that we have fixed in our heads is very important to me. So that's why I do things like this, going out to speak to people and mentoring. So that's the other important piece, is finding someone who supports you, finding someone who believes in you, and having that person be your back support, backbone, and making it through. So yeah.
Great, thank you. So we talked about the role of parents, and sometimes parents are left out of the conversation. What advice would you give to parents in the audience, those who are watching and listening? Just give us a little bit of insight on what you would share with them. Keisha, we'll start here. They're looking at you, so you get to go first again. Right.
I do think the big thing I would push is encouraging the child. And I think when Kelly mentioned about the failing and it's okay to fail. I thought of that movie Meet the Robinsons when the little boy failed and they were like, yay, you failed. Like, you know, they were very excited and they didn't discourage failure. For me, it really is just try to instill that self-confidence, that self-esteem in math and science, especially in girls. And try to not say, well, that's the whole gender stereotypical role, because there is no gender stereotypical math or science role. Anyone can do it. And I think, and that's why I frequently say, you're a math genius, you know, you can do this. I don't say, oh, this is, you know, boys are better or girls are better. It's just instilling in them the confidence to know that you can do this. It's for you and it's easy.
Well, I think too, you know, being careful about, as a mother, saying I wasn't good at math or science, and sort of keeping that to yourself, if that was the case, but encouraging them to know that they can do what they want to do. So in terms of your parents, how did they encourage you? You spoke about it a bit, but your parents, family members, some of the folks who encouraged you along the way.
So yeah, my aunt was the biggest person that encouraged me. She kept up with me semester-wise, then like still now, I still go to her office and talk to her about how my career is going. So my parents were not in technology, so they didn't know too much or what to ask me about technology. So I would just kind of talk to them about my grades. So yeah, I don't know. I guess my aunt was the only person really for me.
And it only takes one, right?
Yeah.
Someone who shows that interest, circles back with you, asks you, you know, how it's going. And sometimes we think that there's some magic to encouraging our young girls as they're growing, but it's really about sticking with them along the way. And anything you want to share, Kelly?
Well, so I'm a new parent. I have an 18-month-old at home, so I'm taking notes.
That's great.
And yeah, I mean, I remember my parents were both very supportive of, you know, what I was trying to do, but I remember my father always asked he always asked the question, if you don't ask the question, the answer is always no. And I am amazed at what people will do with you and for you if you ask the question. The venture capital world, the thing that I was talking about, I mean, you go in, it blew my mind when I first started. You go in, you pitch for 15 or 20 minutes, you have maybe a PowerPoint presentation with 20 slides, and yes, there are a couple of follow-up meetings, and these folks are writing checks for $1 million, $2 million, $5 million. I thought you had to do, you know, more than that. I mean, and it's incredible. And most of the people that get the money are white males. They have created a system, this system of venture capital that rewards that type of risk-taking behavior. And so I just want us all to feel a little more entitled to walk into the room and ask for things. So, and I think, you know, your parents can help, you know, that.
Great.
Can I add on to that? Shameless plug. Kids, as parents, go out there, get into the community. Microsoft has programs at the Microsoft stores, all of our stores. The closest one here would be Westfield Mall and Pentagon City. We have a Youth Spark program, which is actually, they're having an event March 10 and 17. It's called DigiGirls, Women in Coding. So it's a workshop, it's a 2-hour workshop. You go there, you learn some great stuff, and then there's also a game lounge if you're into gaming and stuff. That's also at the store. Just check it out online, yeah.
That's wonderful, and you're serving as a resource, and that's what we need to do, is to communicate those opportunities for our girls. So I know we want to spend some time taking questions from the audience. If you have a question, please come down to the microphone. Don't be shy, as Dr. Navarro said earlier.
While people are coming,
Thank you.
any of the girls in the audience, anyone under 18 considering a career in STEM right now or just interested in it? Putting you on the spot.
I guess I have a couple, comment and slash question. Coming from two different hats. So first of all, I'm a special educator at one of the high schools in the county, a rather large high school. And what I'm really impressed with is their certified nursing assistant program. It's really aggressive, and I think this is their first or second year, and they had a really, really good turnout of students that were able to get certified. So I know is that more health versus science? Because I know they need some science to complete that type of program, but I think it's a great step in the right direction for those students.
It is, and I think a common theme that we've heard tonight from our panelists are that, you know, a lot of this crosses over into other fields, and so we're no longer as sort of rigid around specific content. So I can pitch that to Dr. Navarro in terms of, we can follow up on that and get more information out. But I'm glad to hear that you made that observation, because that's what we want to do. And it speaks to really addressing the needs, current needs, and the needs of the future. We're going to have to marry a lot of these different content areas in order to prepare our folks for serving in those fields. So thank you for that question.
And another comment is, I also like what she said about, because as I said, I'm a special educator. I'm nowhere around. I'm not even in a gen ed setting. I'm in a self-contained classes with my students. But she said, even when you're not in STEM, like, I could still, at some point, if I want to sponsor a club, I could be a part, I could be active as a way of bringing awareness and supporting, students, girls of color that are interested in STEM. So that's encouraging to hear, because I never thought of it in that way. And my second question is, I'm a mother as well, and I have a recent MCPS graduate, and she's at the community college level. And she's still navigating, trying to figure out what she wants to do. She was really great at dance, and she did dance at the high school. She did it the first year of college. This is her second year, but she's not sure. She's still trying to figure out what she wants to do. And then I'm a teacher, so she's like, well, maybe I should try education. And she's like, well, I don't want to do that. So as a parent, I guess my question is, how do I encourage her? She likes gaming, she loves technology, she loves computers. So my thing is, well, you can try something else. You're still trying to figure it out. There's other options that you can go. There's no one, you don't have to take one path. Yes, I'm a teacher and I love working with my students, but that doesn't mean that's your path. So she's tried it and she doesn't like it. So she's still kind of lost figuring her way. So.
Well, this is the time that she can explore, and our community college has different certification areas where she can explore that. But I'll turn it over to the panel just to give some advice on what to say to your daughter in terms of her finding her way.
Well, I know a lot of companies offer rotational internships. So what they'll do is they'll bring you into the company, and you'll rotate through different groups of different organizations within the company, just trying to figure out where you see a fit. That's an option. And if she likes gaming, does she like coding, or is it more design? There's a full spectrum of things that she could do within just one field. Right. And if she just explores that, or reaches out to use LinkedIn,
okay.
And look up current gamers or current game testers and see what they actually do day to day, and ask them questions, and possibly shadow is an option as well.
Okay, thank you. I think maybe if she gets a good internship and just experience it in hands-on, that'll give her a better feel. Yeah. And also, I'm also a mom of a Morehouse graduate, so.
How about that? Money well spent. A lot of it.
Yes, a lot of money.
Well spent. Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your questions and comments. Are there any other questions or comments? Are our young ladies brave enough to come up after this next speaker? I'll give you a minute to get your thoughts together, just to maybe share what you learned tonight and what you've experienced in school. Okay, thank you for coming forward.
Hi, I'm a teacher and a parent, and my question is, I guess, kind of twofold. I have a rising fifth grader, and I wanted to know what opportunities are there in Montgomery County in the middle schools. This coding club sounds great, but is there a place that we can go and see exactly what's available, maybe, for summer programs, or if the school doesn't have a certain club, what can we do?
Sure, and what we'll do is, I hate to just refer folks to the website, but our schools have different programs, as I think you heard from the initial panel, and so we'd be happy to provide a list of schools that have specific programs, and I think Dr. Navarro, did you want to speak to that? I see you getting up.
I was just going to add a couple of things. We have great partnerships with many organizations that partner with us. I want to highlight Kid Museum, because we are being more intentional about the partnership that we have through middle school. And as Dr. Statham says, we'll follow up with some pieces that we can, but as a parent, oh, there you are. I was looking where you went. As a parent, I would also encourage our parents to ask the school those questions, and ask your PTA those questions, because as a parent of MCPS students, I often feel like if there's an interest in the PTA, or if there's an interest in the school, it may happen, but if it doesn't, then our own individual activism as parents, and thinking about those opportunities, I always think that when I was a principal, I always said, if my community is satisfied, then I'm not doing something as a principal, because my community should always be asking me for different things. So programmatically, definitely let you see what we have available, but I also would say, as parents, how do we engage and demand from our schools continually more opportunities?
That's great, and just to add on to what, oh, please.
If you don't mind, I just
Not at all.
wanted to share with you that next year, part of our middle school STEM vision, we are providing a variety of courses that combines coding, engineering, technology education to middle schoolers. So you'll see some changes coming at your school next year. Look in the course bulletin for the descriptions. The middle school course bulletins, they have all the descriptions. And, inquire, ask your counselors if they plan on offering any of their courses. If not, encourage them to. One of the courses is coding and robotic design.
Okay, very good. And as you heard in the introduction, Dr. Navarro is our Chief Academic Officer, and it's her office that provides all of these programs, but they exist in our schools. And the Office of School Support and Improvement, which I oversee, we oversee the 205 schools. So I would just echo what Dr. Navarro said. You can speak specifically to your principal, where your student will be attending, and ask those questions. And if you have any follow-up, concerns, questions, you can always contact my office as well. Okay, so we have a brave young lady, and she's going to share some insights with us. Thank you for coming forward.
I have a question.
Okay.
But hi, my name is Sophia, and I go to Farquhar Middle School. And what's the difference between coding and scripting?
It's a good question. I'm going to turn it over to the experts.
Scripting falls into coding. So scripting is more on okay, so there is development. So development is basically you're taking a vision. So say someone creates a picture. You're making that picture reality from developing. Scripting is a cool way to do things without actually being there. So scripting, you can do literally anything, scripting. And development, you're making things come to life. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for coming forward.
Yes, it's not a question, it's more of a comment. I'm an elementary school teacher, and when the first person that came up and spoke mentioned elementary schools having any kind of a focus, I see the pretty pictures of the little young students, but we really don't have a lot of these programs at our school. We have very few technology teachers, as I'm like one of few. There were about 12 we used to meet, and now there's like maybe 2. And there are curriculum development that has been going on that's included, but as a teacher who teaches a reading, then he teaches math, they teach social studies, they don't really get enough time to focus on a lot of these STEM ideas, especially if they don't feel like they're a specialist in that area. So to have someone who has that specialty in an elementary school, and I still have a lot to learn, but I love to even try with the students. Bringing that into the schools, I think, is very important to get them started young, because they don't have this. I think the self-esteem is what's lacking a little bit, and the students, I can hear them saying, I'm not good at that, or that's too hard. They always say, that's too hard. So they don't really see that it's a possibility. You can do it. So I just wanted to make a comment that elementary schools need that focus and kind of don't forget about us.
Thank you. Well, as a former elementary teacher and principal, I really appreciate those thoughts, because very often it doesn't trickle down into the elementary schools. And in the first panel, one of the panelists mentioned that we do need to do more. I think we also need to take a look at how we schedule our elementary day, because you mentioned, there's just not enough time. So we have to be more creative and innovative, and having the courage to say, well, after having this particular approach to education for hundreds of years, maybe we need to shift so that then we can better prepare our young people for their futures. So thank you for that. Yes.
Hi, everyone. I just have a question, but I also have a comment.
Okay.
Being a mother of 5 and having gone through MCPS for the last, when did you graduate? So pretty much the last 18 years, I've had 2 kids graduated from MCPS. Now I have a sophomore in high school, Mesa, an 8th grader in middle school, and a 3rd grader. I've seen a lot. And I'm very grateful, but that there's a lot more opportunities for, like, when I look at my youngest, the 3, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I mean, from looking at the time we were talking about the new curriculum 2.0, and it was so fascinating, and I had to learn so much, to now, pretty much everything. STEM, it's like all over the place. The opportunities are like it's so overwhelming, but in a good way.
Good.
But yet I'm also a volunteer. I've been volunteering for MCPS for the last 18 years. I've been in the classrooms, in the copy room, in the office, in the playground, in the lunchroom, pretty much, throughout their school lives. One thing haven't changed. The class size. I'm coming from volunteering. I'm going tomorrow to read for different classrooms. And it always, just today, 2:45, I'm sitting and looking at the class size, and I'm like, there's so much opportunities, but we cannot accomplish much if the classes are crowded. We still need we're still short parent volunteers. The teachers are overwhelmed. Certain reactions that I notice when I'm in the classroom as a parent, not just a volunteer, is the frustration. If the staffing is not there, the class size is like humongous. We don't have a lot of parent volunteer. How can we really, really take advantages of all these wonderful things? And it's just one thing that just plays in my head as a parent and as a volunteer.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And it is my office that staffs schools, and the budget, the Board of Education passes a budget, and we establish class size guidelines. And you're not the only one we hear this from, and so we're sensitive to it. And one of the things that we're focused on is, while we may not be able to allocate an additional teacher, what we try to do is think about how we can best use paraeducators to reduce the instructional group sizes so that there are more adults in the classroom, so that you can meet with small groups and give more one-on-one attention. But that's always going to be a challenge, because we know that research shows that class sizes, in order to really make a difference based on student outcomes, we would need to get class sizes down to 17. And that is, that would really, it's just not possible in this day and time in terms of the budget situation and the climate. So we do try to approach it differently by getting more adults in the classroom. So you can talk to your principal, and if, when you say humongous, I don't like hearing that. I don't know what humongous means, but I have an idea. Yeah, okay, well, talk to your principal and have them call my office, and we can talk about their staffing
and
model.
just, you know, an idea, which I've had over the years, but of course, it's sometimes hard because some parents have to work. I do too. I have to work. But I just make it a priority to at least find time during the week to be in my children's class, because I know that it's hard for one person to cover the whole class, talking about the teacher. My idea has been over the years for MCPS to reach out to parents. Some parents are not even aware that 1 hour a week can make an impact. There's got to be a way to like really reach out to parents. If every parent put in 1 hour a week in every classroom, then whether the budget is there or not, we'll accomplish something.
Well,
And
I
that's
think,
just-
yes, and I appreciate what you're saying, and we need to continue creating a welcoming environment for our parents to come in and support us. And someone like you could be a great recruiter as well. I'm sure that you know of others who can come into the school and encourage them to come in. So I appreciate your dedication. It also not only helps us, but hearing you talk about your observations about Curriculum 2.0 and understanding what our teachers face and how committed they are, you're building your capacity as a parent to support your children. So we appreciate that very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Oh, good. Okay.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm Olivia Blucker, and I go to Richard Montgomery, and I'm in the International Baccalaureate Magnet Program. And I often find myself around students who are open, specifically young girls as myself, who are open towards entering STEM and are okay with science. But when I look to my friends who aren't in IB or kids who aren't within the Magnet program, I see themselves more hesitant towards being a part of STEM. So how do you think that we can implement the ideas of STEM and the openness that the Magnet kids get into kids that aren't in the Magnet programs?
Out of the mouths of babes, right? So that's exactly what we've attempted to do this year. We're opening access not only to magnet programs, but really acknowledging that we have students in all of our schools, regardless of if they're in a program, they should have access to that rigor. And so that's something that we've really started working more intensively on over the past 2 years. And change is hard for people, but we feel like we need to make sure that we provide more access and opportunities for students like your friends who you're talking about, so that they don't have to enter into a program to have those opportunities. So thank you for raising that.
I have a follow-up question for you. Is it, when you think about your friends that are not interested in STEM, or it could be any other subject, is it because you feel like they don't have the curriculum to learn about it? Is it or is it something else? Is it that they don't have an example? What do you think?
Well, I feel like we're given, students in the Magnet program are given, higher level, like teachers and opportunities. We're given more. And an example, I had a friend who tried to take a standard level class, and she realized that the teacher was not up to par with the IB level classes. So she went back because she understood that the teachers in IB are performing at a much higher level than the teachers that are teaching standard level, which really shouldn't occur.
It shouldn't, and that really is instructive for us in terms of the professional development that we provide for all of our teachers, because all of them should be equipped to teach at that level. So thank you. Good question, good follow-up question. So, in looking at the time, I believe we're out of time, but I do want to thank our panelists. Chamaka, Kelly, and Keisha are true role models of what it means to know what you're interested in, apply yourself, go to the boot camps, learn so that you can speak certain language, and what you have to say resonates from those people who you need support from. So we've talked a bit about the school experience as well as the workplace experience, which when it's all said and done, it pretty much continues throughout our lives. The experiences that we have in school, we will face some of those obstacles in the workplace, and it's just really honing those skills, making sure that we persevere toward our goals. So I want to thank you all for coming tonight, committing your time, and really sharing a very important message with our community. So thank you.
Kimberly?